Molly from the Feed. Today we are going to be making a super easy strawberry cake with our friends at Driscolls Berries using their new Berry Big strawberries. You get these absolutely gorgeous, ripe, and juicy strawberries. So these are non-GMO, they're naturally grown, and basically as strawberry season sort of starts to hit its stride in California where these are grown, the berries just become naturally larger and juicier, and this is what you get. So our cake today is going to be a strawberry basil sheet cake. So we're gonna make it in a bowl. You don't need a mixer. It's an oil-based cake, so super easy to put together. We're gonna have a little bit of fresh basil in there, some of those diced Berry Big strawberries, and we're gonna top it with a basil infused whipped cream, which is super easy to pull together. And then to kind of bring it to the next level, we are gonna be making these gorgeous strawberry roses, which really couldn't be easier just using those Berry Big strawberries. So let's get started. So here is the start of our basil infused whipped cream. I wanted to give this a head start because once you heat the cream to a simmer, you have to infuse it for 30 minutes with the fresh basil, and then you have to chill it for about an hour before you can whip it. So all I did was I added 1 cup of heavy cream into a small saucepan. I added ½ cup of fresh basil leaves. I brought it just up to a simmer just when I started to see some bubbles around the side, took it off the heat, covered it, and let it steep just like you would a cup of tea. And now I am going to pop it into a bowl and let it chill for about an hour before we whip it up. So we have just our standard ingredients here. I have some all-purpose flour, some baking powder, baking soda, kosher salt for our dry ingredients, and then for the wet ingredients, we have our sugar, which we're going to infuse with a little fresh basil, add some eggs, some olive oil, some sour cream, some whole milk, a little vanilla, of course, and then these beautiful diced berries. First thing I'm gonna do is just sift together our dry ingredients. So I have a bowl with a little sieve on top, and I'm going to add our all-purpose flour. We're just sifting this. It helps to give you like a lighter, airier cake. It also helps to get rid of any clumps that might form in your flour, and to just make sure that the leavener, the baking soda and baking powder, is really well incorporated. Okay, so our baking soda, our baking powder, our salt. And then I'm just going to kind of tap this on the side and sift this through. If you don't have a sifter, you could also just whisk this really well. Just make sure to kind of incorporate some air and just work through any clumps that might form. Okay, perfect. So I'm gonna set this aside and we'll get started on those wet ingredients. So in this large glass bowl, I have our granulated sugar, and I'm gonna add a little bit of fresh basil that I just minced up, and I'm gonna use my fingers to really incorporate this basil into the sugar. So this is gonna just sort of release a lot of that flavor and really infuse the sugar with all of that delicious basil essence. So this is looking great, but more importantly, it's smelling really great. I can really smell that floral essence of the basil, so I know that our sugar is good to go. I'm gonna add in 4 whole eggs, and I'm just going to whisk this. I wanna combine it really well, and I'm going for like a light yellow, kind of like pale and fluffy coloring consistency. I just wanna make sure that that sugar is dissolved and that everything is really well incorporated. Okay, so next up, we're gonna go in with our olive oil. You could also use like any sort of neutral oil you have, canola, vegetable. I kind of like the flavor the olive oil brings. A little whole milk, some sour cream, and our vanilla extract. And I'm just gonna give this a good whisk, make sure everything is really nicely incorporated. So now I'm just gonna grab those dry ingredients that we set aside, and I'm gonna plop them in our bowl. And I'm just going to use a spatula to fold these together. So of course, whenever you're making cake, you don't want to overwork the batter because that can lead to a dense cake. So I'm just going to use this sort of like gentle folding motion until no streaks of flour remain. Okay, so this is looking great. Last thing we're gonna add are those diced Berry Big strawberries. And we're just gonna really gently fold these through, and then we'll be ready to get this into our baking pan. Okay, so I have a 9 by 13 inch baking pan. I just sprayed it with a little nonstick spray, and I'm going to put our prepared batter right in this pan. And this is gonna bake in a 325-degree oven for about 45 minutes. Okay, so I'm gonna pop this in now, and then we can get started on our whipped cream. So remember, we popped this in the fridge. It's been chilling for about an hour. I actually stuck my entire mixing bowl in the freezer. I just feel like that helps whenever I make whipped cream, just to make sure everything's nice and cold. I'm just gonna pour this through a fine mesh strainer. I'm gonna use a spoon to kind of press on these basil leaves and just make sure we're extracting all that flavor and all that cream. And I'm just going to add 2 tablespoons of granulated sugar, and I'm gonna whip this up. Keep a close eye on it. You don't wanna over whip it, like 1 to 2 minutes. So our whipped cream is done. I took this to just soft peaks, and I am going to stick it in the fridge to chill. If you prefer like a stiffer whipped cream, feel free to whip it a little bit more. I just kind of like this texture, especially with the light olive oil cake and then those fresh strawberries. So our cake is out of the oven. You can see I tested it right here with a little toothpick. And I'm just letting it cool. One thing, when I'm using like a bakeware pan, you know, like a stoneware pan to bake a cake, I always run my knife around the edge. It just helps it to sort of like cool evenly, and that way you won't have any like big valleys in your finished cake. So we're gonna let this cool, and then we'll top it with our whipped cream and then those beautiful berry roses. So I just inverted the cake out of our pan, totally optional. If you wanted to just decorate it right in your baking pan, go for it. And I just have our whipped cream here. And then you're just gonna kind of rustically spread this almost to the edge, but I kind of like the look of leaving a little bit of a bare edge. And then we're gonna top it with those beautiful strawberry roses. Okay, so here she is, so adorable. And then we have just one last finishing touch. I'm gonna add a few fresh basil leaves. I'm gonna add one little basil leaf right here. And look at this adorable cake, totally naturally decorated. These strawberries, look at that color, so red all the way through. Yum, I can't wait to eat this. Okay, so let's cut a slice here. Look at that, it's perfect. Yum, I can't wait to eat this. Ooh, the cake is super moist from that olive oil. We have these delicious berries inside. Flavor's really, really nice. You get a little bit of that basil, you get sweetness from the berries. Has a nice springy crumb. Super easy whipped topping. Can't get better for a spring cake, so I hope you all make it. You can get the full recipe on Driscolls.com, and we'll see you guys soon.